Hello you guys, welcome back to the Peace, Love, and Happiness Club YouTube channel. My name's Nathan and today I'm here to tell you a little bit more about one of my favorite genus of plants, and that is Monstera. Monstera get their name from the Latin word for monstrous or abnormal, and that is because a lot of these Monstera can get absolutely massive over time. You can find them at the grocery store, your standard houseplant store, just about anywhere. So I'm really excited to share with you guys a couple more uncommon varieties that we offer here at Peace, Love, and Happiness Club that you might have not seen before. So I'm sure we're all pretty familiar with the Monstera deliciosa, which is what I've got here in its juvenile form. These are the Monstera that you'll find just about everywhere. While the leaves are not fenestrated on this guy right now, they definitely will become fenestrated as the plant matures. Now, if you're sort of a beginner Monstera collector and you are wondering what the splits and holes in the leaves are called, they are called fenestrations. So you'll hear me use that word a lot throughout this video. That just refers to the holes that you find in the leaves. Similar to the Monstera deliciosa, but a little bit harder to come by and at a bit of a higher price tag, is the Monstera albo. Now, this is the same as the Monstera deliciosa, however, it has a genetic mutation that causes parts of the leaves to lack chlorophyll, which is how you get this beautiful white variegation on the leaves. The variegation can kind of vary from plant to plant. On this one, it's a little bit more marbled, but on a lot of albo that you'll find, the variegation is really sectoral, meaning that you'll find really big pieces of the leaves with no chlorophyll in them. If you really like the white variegation of the Monstera albo, you might also really enjoy the yellow variegation of Monstera aurea. On both the albo and the aurea, the variegation is definitely very light dependent. So you're gonna wanna give these guys pretty bright indirect light. If you have grow lights available to you, I definitely recommend keeping your variegated Monstera under a grow light. Bright indirect is what you wanna shoot for. Similar to the Monstera deliciosa, but quite a bit harder to find, is the Monstera Surana. Now, these guys were found in 1961 in Oaxaca, Mexico, and at first glance, you might think it's the same as a Monstera deliciosa. However, the leaves on these guys will stay a bit smaller and they become a lot more deeply cut as the plant matures. So a really fun one that we've sort of just started to offer here at Peace, Love, and Happiness Club. You can see this is our mother plant that was recently chopped back and it's starting to push out some new growth. So a lot of times when we hear the name Monstera, we think of the standard Monstera deliciosa, but there's a lot of variety within the Monstera family in terms of leaf size, shape, and variegation. Really excited to show you guys a more vining variety of Monstera, which is the Monstera siltepecana. These guys produce beautiful pinnate leaves with a silvery variegation to them. While you can allow these guys to trail and they make beautiful hanging plants, ideally you want to offer these guys a vertical structure to climb up. If you do that, you'll start to notice larger leaves on them as well as some fenestrations in the leaves. Another vining Monstera variety that you could either allow to trail in a pot or allow to climb is the Monstera accoyagensis. I always struggle to say the name of this Monstera, but it is a really, really fun one. A lot of us are probably familiar with the Monstera adansonii, or also called the Swiss cheese plant. So this Monstera accoyagensis here, as it matures, starts to produce some fenestrations similar to that of the adansonii. Another beautiful variety of Monstera that we offer here at Peace, Love, and Happiness Club is the Monstera adansonii albo variegated. We do also offer the standard green form. However, I pulled this guy here to share with you guys today. I absolutely love the variegated adansonii. This was definitely one of the first plants that really piqued a lot of collectors' interest in the more harder to come by houseplants. Monstera do like to climb, although you can display them as a beautiful hanging basket. If you really want to get larger leaves with some bigger fenestrations, you definitely want to let them climb. Speaking of the fenestrations on Monstera, we can talk about one that doesn't fenestrate and looks a little bit different than you might think for a Monstera, and that is the Monstera Standleyana albo. This is one of my all-time favorite plants. You get these beautiful elongated leaves with really nice sectoral variegation when you're giving them enough bright indirect light. If you're lucky, you may be able to find one of these in your standard houseplant store, but these guys do tend to be a little bit more uncommon. A Monstera that puts out really fenestrated leaves would be the Monstera pinnata partita. This guy's often confused with the Monstera Peru, which also possesses these sort of textured deep green leaves. However, the Monstera pinnata partita produces much larger leaves and it fenestrates beautifully. You can see these deeply cut fenestrations there. Once again, you want to give these guys a vertical structure to climb up, as it will promote some larger leaf growth and larger fenestrations. I showed you the Monstera adansonii albo. Another Monstera adansonii that we offer here at Peace, Love, and Happiness Club is the Monstera adansonii Indonesian mint. I absolutely adore this variety of adansonii. I find growing them out that the leaves on these guys tend to be a little bit more elongated and the fenestrations are quite a bit bigger. I mean, yeah, you can see there, the holes in these leaves are absolutely massive. And then on this Indonesian mint, rather than producing that bright white variegation that the adansonii albo produces, you get some beautiful splashy, lighter green variegation, hence the name Indonesian mint. I mentioned Monstera are pretty easy to care for, but we'll talk about one that's a little bit more on the finicky side, and that is the Monstera obliqua Peru. About 2 years ago, this was a super hard to come by plant, and that's because of just how finicky these guys are. Really high humidity, and they can be kind of picky about the light situation that you keep them in. I know earlier I mentioned you want to give these guys bright indirect light, but for something like an obliqua, you can opt for a little bit of lower light. I remember at the start of COVID, as I recall, it was about $1,000 a leaf for these guys. The price has come down a bit more, and they are a little bit more readily available, but this is definitely a Monstera that I foresee always being on the more harder to find side. It's the Monstera subpinnata. Now, at first glance, you probably wouldn't think that this guy is a Monstera, but it is. I absolutely adore them. You get beautiful, more palm-like leaves on these guys that could get quite big as they mature. Like with all Monstera, you definitely want to offer these guys a vertical structure to climb up. If you're letting them trail, you'll start to notice that the plant will produce a lot of runners, which means that it's putting out a new vine, but there's not any foliage growing. Similar to the Monstera siltepecana, but with a bit of a different growth habit, is the Monstera Dubia. Now, these guys are small now, but they can get absolutely massive over time. It really is a goal of mine to one day own a huge Monstera Dubia. So when these guys are in their juvenile state, you get really beautiful silvery leaves, like I said, similar to the siltepecana. As you allow them to climb, and you definitely want to let them climb, the leaves will start to get a bit bigger and then they begin to fenestrate. Monstera Dubia are also a really great plant to keep in a more higher humidity setting because they do like to climb and shingle. So this would be a fun one to add to a terrarium or keep in something like a IKEA greenhouse cabinet. Okay, so I mentioned the Monstera pinnata partita and how it's similar to the Monstera Peru. So I wanted to share with you guys this beautiful variegated Monstera Peru that we've got back here in our grow space. This is a mother plant that we pretty frequently take propagations from, but this is a genetic mutation of your standard Monstera Peru, which So yeah, this is a beautiful specimen that we've been growing out back here in our grow space. This is a mother plant that we've taken some cuttings from recently, but it has bounced right back. Monstera are really quick growers, especially when you're giving them the right conditions. So I've been talking a lot about how you want to let your Monstera climb. Now here at Peace, Love, and Happiness Club, we've used a couple different methods to allow our Monstera to climb. You'll see here we've got your pretty standard green moss pole. You can find these at most garden centers or big box stores. But then recently we have been using these Plantly 3D printed modular moss poles. And I will tell you, these 3D printed moss poles are definitely the way to go for such a fast growing plant like a Monstera. You can see this Monstera Peru here is already about to outgrow this moss pole, which means we'll have to chop it back here within the next couple of weeks. Whereas with this Plantly moss pole, we can just continue adding on top of it and letting the plant reach its full potential before we have to chop it back. I've also found that they hold on to moisture quite a bit better than these green moss poles. So because these moss poles are modular, it is super easy to add to them, but it is also super easy to subtract from them. So say you've chopped your plant back, or maybe you're moving, it's really easy to just twist these guys apart, store them away, really compact, which in turn makes your moving process with your plants quite a bit easier. These Plantly moss poles are available on our website right now, as well as in store. We've got tons of options. They really are the perfect way to find the perfect moss pole for whatever plant you are staking up. All right, that about wraps up today's video on Monstera. I hope you guys enjoyed and learned something new. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. I will see you guys in the next one. As always, peace out.